I've been talking about Hoffman boots for a very long time. You guys know that I'm a huge fan of this company. And it's not just the great products that they make. It's the story behind the company and the people that run it. This generational family of shoemakers right here in North Idaho make some of the best hunting boots and pack boots and lineman boots and all your boot needs right in one place at hoffmanboots.com. For us hunters, I highly recommend the Explorer. And I don't care if you're running in the 6-inch or the 8-inch or the 10-inch. Personally, I love my 8-inch Explorers. They've got the Vibram sole. They are totally waterproof. There's no break-in period. Guys, you can't go wrong with Hoffman boots because you get all that without breaking the bank. So check them out at hoffmanboots.com and use promo code all caps lock Huntsman10 at checkout for 10% off and find out why I have been wearing my Hoffman boots for years and years. Don't be one of those people that have it in their mind that Savage Arms is the same firearms that your grandpa was running around with 40 years ago. It's not. Big game hunting rifles that you can count on. I love my Savage firearms. I have got the Savage 110 Hunter, and my daughter is pretty happy with this 110 Apex Hunter XP. The AccuTrigger is a really interesting little piece to this firearm, and it's a new piece of technology that if you've never tried one, you should, because it'll make you more accurate. It's a much easier, higher quality firearm than anything else I've got out there, and I've got a lot of firearms, guys, and so if you're in the market for a new hunting rifle, make sure you visit savagearms.com, because I promise you're going to find something that is accurate, easy to handle, easy to use, long range, functional, just a high-quality weapon that you could take to the field and have a lot of confidence that when the time comes, you've got that Savage backing you up and you're going to be notching a tag. Check it out, savagearms.com. Let them know the Western Huntsman sent you. Thanks, guys. There exists a threat, from anti-hunting groups to politicians trying to give our land away, and we won't stand for it. Those vast western landscapes provide the space for our wildlife to thrive and a place for hunters and anglers to fuel the fire that sparks their soul. In this show, we share our love of hunting, fishing, and conservation. Here, we provide the foundation to meet these threats through passion and the grit of the American outdoorsman. Welcome to the Western Huntsman Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of the Western Huntsman Podcast. This is Jim Huntsman, your host, coming at you from the Broken Tine studio right here in Northwest Montana, where we are getting just absolutely hammered with snow, and I'm sick of plowing. And so it is what it is. I guess it's that time of year. So, guys, I did want to mention real quick before I bring the guest on that I'm not sure if I'm running a Hoffman Boots ad in this episode or not, but you guys know I tell you all the time, I am not just some gear prostitute that'll have anybody sponsor my show and you know, if they pay money kind of thing, then I'm good with it. I promised you a long time ago that anything I talk about that is a sponsor on the show is something that I truly believe in. And I just kind of want to give an extra little shout out to Hoffman Boots, because I've been wearing those 10-inch insulated Mountaineers through this winter, and I get really bad circulation in my feet for some reason. I always have. So my feet are quick to get cold. This is the first winter I've had this particular Mountaineer boot, and it's the first time my feet don't get cold, whether I'm plowing in the tractor or if I'm sitting in a deer stand. It doesn't matter. So I just kind of wanted to give Hoffman an extra little shout out there. I feel like I haven't been giving him enough love on that end, because you know, I'm just a big fan of these boots. So if you guys need some good winter boots, man, check out hoffmanboots.com and save 10%. Use promo code Huntsman10, and that will get you through this cold, nasty winter we seem to be going through, at least here in Montana and North Idaho. This week, guys, we've had a lot of discussions in the past kind of centered around self-reliance, preparedness, homesteading, all these things that, my life is kind of centered around. And I didn't know that you guys had such interest. And I think I've said this on a recent podcast. I didn't know the audience had such a big interest in this side of my life, because usually we're talking about hunting and the anti-hunting movement and, talking smack about hostile vegans and whatever else we talk about on this show. But I get a ton of messages about, simple things that we do and some of the things I show on my page, and whether it's, cleaning out a chicken coop or, whatever we do here on a homestead. So I have been following this guy named Rob Benson on Instagram, and his Instagram handle is @RobbieBenson. And if you guys aren't following him, I'm telling you, you need to, because he's like the ultimate guru when it comes to preparedness, self-reliance, supplies, emergency scenarios. On his Instagram, it says survival plus camp plus homestead plus hunt. He's got all these rules that break down all these different aspects of self-reliance and being prepared for all sorts of different bad case, or, worst case scenarios that may come up. And we just live in a crazy world. So I thought it'd be a great idea to get this guy on. And I've been talking to him for like 5 minutes, and I already really like him. So you guys, I think you're in for a good one. So Rob, I appreciate you joining me. Welcome to the show, man.
Thank you. Appreciate having me.
So I guess the best way to start this is, giving everybody just a bird's eye overview of who you are, and we'll just kind of take it from there.
Cool. My name's Rob, and I've taken only cold showers for the last 5 years. So that's kind of,
man, you're a braver man than me.
We've got so many things in this life that have been catered to make us soft. And I'm not saying I'm a tough guy. I'm just saying everything in my life seems easy, except for the struggles of having teenagers and all of the things that kind of hit us with finances or whatever it is, or running a business. But generally speaking, everything we have is so dumbed down and soft. And I think a lot of the things that I look at in life are, okay, what would make me a little bit stronger, a little bit better? And so I think that's kind of spurred a lot of this type of content that I've been putting out, is just looking at things and getting back to probably, I'm 43, probably the stuff that my grandparents, and I know, talking to my dad, he's, had some experiences in relation to having their cattle, having their pigs, living off of that, remembering when the TV became a thing in their house, and living in a certain way where they're able to sustain life. Whereas I think today, if you were to ask 100 people, there's probably 2 or 3 that could do it. Maybe not even that many. Yeah. And so, I guess that's the lead in for why I am doing what I'm doing, is I just feel as though there's a lot of little refinement that can be had in society to realize or recognize there's a little bit more to life than playing golf or watching your favorite football team.
Yeah. I've been talking about this exact subject for a long time, and I just kind of like touch on it here and there, but I don't know that I've ever heard anybody articulate what I'm trying to say as well as you just did. and I couldn't agree more. And a big topic in the past has been, we deal on this show a lot with the anti-hunting movement and people that are really hostile to this lifestyle of whether it's just a lifestyle of self-reliance or homesteading or hunting. Hunting is a huge form of self-reliance, and this ancient lifestyle that hunting is, right? Because hunting isn't like a hobby. It's a lifestyle. You've got to prepare for it. We talk about it here on this show year round, whether it's hunting season or not. But one of the biggest things we've discussed is, to your point, is we live in this world where things like, Facebook and Uber Eats kind of take over our life, and it's made things so easy that it's almost made us, especially men, come to this place of being very domicile and sedentary and so unchallenged with what it used to be a human being on this planet, right? It's just such an easy lifestyle, and obviously first world problems, right? Because there's places in the world that are not like this. But I look at things like the anti-hunting movement and how these people have gotten to this place where they attach themselves to this cause that really has no effect on their personal life, but they want to push it as if they're personally offended that we go out and hunt and we kill things to put in the freezer. And I wonder if sometimes this super easy, super modern, sedentary, weird place that we've gotten to in this country and in much of the world has led to these people finding that their life has no real meaning, and so they attach themselves to a cause like being against hunting and joining PETA and other organizations like that to kind of have like this tribal sense of belonging. And that's where a lot of this comes from, because it doesn't make sense as humans to be against living off the land and using the resources that are here. What say you on that?
So I can't help it. I'm going to talk a little bit about COVID. That's okay.
Yeah,
because
it's hard not to on this topic.
Well, this is what spurred a lot of personal angst, I suppose. And it really boils back to in 2020 on a different website, not the buckhorncliffs.com website. I wrote it was May of 2020. I wrote a long post about how where we're headed over the next probably year, maybe a little bit longer, is not going to benefit people. It's not going to be a good thing. And one of the things, I had no financial interest in this, even a little bit, and it was to get on to, I did it only on TikTok. I got onto TikTok, created content in relation to what I was seeing with the measures that were being taken, all of the things that our government seemed to think was important to put down onto us as if we were just minions in their little government play set. And I didn't really see that as a benefit to myself, my family, and especially my business at that time, because we were impacted pretty significantly. So I got on. Ended up being very controversial. And my opinion was, just let me make decisions for my health, because the people that are telling me what to do with my health are a lot less healthy than I am. So first off, you can't tell me something if you're not living a certain way. And then you get pharma involved. And so over the course of 2020 into 2021, I created a TikTok account that blew up pretty big. And I got a pretty big voice on there, and it was shut off with no real notice. It was just cut off. And what was happening is I had individuals that disagreed with what my stance was, that had a big audience as well. And what they would do is they would tell their audience, go over here and flag that for misinformation. And so that happened a few times, and that account was just completely gone. Wow. So I created another account, and that grew pretty quickly. And then that got shut off just the same way. And I'm like, do you know what? I had no fun. It's one thing if I were like a plant, if some organization hired me to go on and say something to explain to people that maybe this was a bad idea, and we can go into all those specifics. But as I did that, I realized I've got no pony in the show. There's nothing in this whole scenario right now that I'm acquiring income. I'm acquiring like a better place. Actually, what my worry was, and what happened a few times, is customers of our business that have nothing to do with that would find out and say, well, I'm not spending money with you. And it's like, my whole message is let you choose for you. Isn't that a good thing? But it turned out it's not a good thing when you go up against pharma, because pharma has 75% of all ad spend on the network television programs. All of the news, 75% of all of the revenue that's coming in for those networks are from big pharma. So you're not going to hear it there. You're only going to hear it from people that don't have that pony in that show. But when you do that and it goes against a government narrative, They just shut you off. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to go to what my day-to-day life looks like. And I'm going to talk about things to prepare in case of something as simple as a job loss, or as difficult to believe could happen as people wanting to hurt us.
Yeah.
So there's a broad spectrum. And so when someone says, you're thinking that something's going to happen that really isn't going to happen, I want them to understand it's a lot more important to me that I'm learning skills, that I'm becoming more self-reliant, and that I can enjoy these things, because it's actually really interesting to learn to work with your hands and to understand what ingredients are, what lasts a long time on the shelf, what are things that I could do to prepare and protect my family. That's all interesting stuff. That's not, there's no waste in that. So all of that under consideration, and I know that's a lot longer answer than maybe you were looking for.
No, that's perfect.
All of that churned into the desire to just go, all right, let's just talk about the things that we can be doing right now when this happens again. Because I have no doubt in my mind, being the age that I am, I still hopefully have a lot more time to live. There's going to be something else. Could it be an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse? It could be. I don't think it will be, but I talk about that. Could it be individuals coming across the border right now that want to place a bomb in the corner of my town and blow it up, and it then causes this mass chaos? It could be. Could it be societal unrest where you have people that love Trump and people that love not Biden, but Democrats, and they're going at it, in the streets? Yeah. Whatever that case is, there are so many aspects, and not to mention the wars and everything that's going on, but there are so many things that I think is the reason why there is such a demand for me talking about what I'm talking about, is because people, even if you don't watch the news, there's a feeling, there's the heaviness that there's something brewing.
There is. And I don't know. I can't put my finger on it, Rob, because you're exactly right. 10 years ago, you have a huge Instagram. I'm looking at it. You're almost 220,000 followers. That thing is wildly popular. I see you post these reels. You get all these interactions, hundreds of comments, thousands of likes, all this stuff goes on. I watch it, and I'm just like, I don't know that would have been the case 10 years ago. But today, we have this, like you said, it's like this feeling, this like something is awry. I'm 43 years old as well. And so I'm not exactly super long in the tooth, but I'm no spring chicken either. And like there is something different ever since COVID in the air. And I think you nailed a couple of points. So things I worry about are, the way it's looking, I'm sure it looks like Trump's going to pull this thing off and he's going to win. But there's the other half of this country that hates that idea. What are they going to do about that? What kind of unrest is going to come out of that? Or I am not in agreement with you that an EMP is unlikely. There are somewhere in the neighborhood of several hundred a week that are attempted throughout the world. I don't know what that stat is. I can't remember. I just heard it recently. I also read recently that, were the power grid to go down, whether it's an EMP or just the fact that we have this really aging power grid, it was like
the power grid is weak.
It's super weak. And the statistical data from some study was, I wish I had all this to reference for folks, but somewhere in the neighborhood.
Referencing the 90%?
Yeah, the 90% of people would be dead within how many months was it? 6?
I think it's between 9 and 12 months. So up
between
to a year.
90, yeah.
But maybe less than that.
Mm-hmm.
It makes sense.
It could be. It makes sense. I would suppose that depends on if the power grid went out in April or if the power grid went out on Thanksgiving. And that I think that would be a huge determining factor. But the point is we saw what happened when COVID came out, and we had this weird attachment to like as if the government had gone through something like that before and we hadn't. But the thing is we have. Nobody had gone through that before. Not the president, not the pharmaceutical companies, not the news media. Nobody had gone through that before. and there was this weird air in the air that was like, just this uncertainty, and it made people a little bit crazy about, you saw people buying up all the toilet paper on the shelves, which was like just ludicrous to me. Talk about focusing on the wrong things. But now that sense and that air and that heaviness seems to be deeper than it was even then. And from a sense that like, I fear that there is a bigger thing coming. And I'm not naturally prone to being like, I'm not like a conspiracy theorist. I'm not like a tinfoil hat kind of guy. I'm not a, I'm not what you would, when you know how people label preppers as this certain extremist kind of personality. That's not who I am. But I can tell you right now, even without those things, my family, we can go a year without anything from anybody. And that's how we've set up our life. And I kind of wanted to pick your brain on some of that. Like, I don't even know if that's good enough, but we could go longer, but we wouldn't have to do anything for a year, if that makes sense. And so what do you see as, we've talked about everything from, maybe just an economic downturn, like you were saying, maybe just the power grid starts going out, and because of that, or some kind of supply issue happens with oil, which would shut down our supply chains. It could be a myriad of things. What do you see as like some of the biggest threats or concerns looking forward to the next, 18 months to, I don't know, 2-3 years?
Well, there's a lot to talk about on that. And I think starting the thing that scares me the most is the HOA effect. And the way that the HOA effect works is the homeowners association, for whatever reason, and I'm grateful I live up in the mountains and don't have a
Right?
homeowners association. Anyone that's listening that's got a homeowners association, I am sorry, but it's the homeowner association effect, where you get a group of people that you've got rules that happen on the county level, and for whatever reason, they think, now that I've got a little power, it's the same thing that politicians do on a bigger scale, but now that I got a little power, I don't like that color of that specific house, or I don't like whatever the thing is. I don't think people should have chickens in their yard, because what if they have a rooster and it's noisy? All of those things, in my mind, you get this mentality. And you and all of us saw this mentality during COVID, where you'd have normally very quiet, shy people feeling as though they had the responsibility to tell a child to put a mask on their face.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing that I want to do is say, just hold on. If you're worried about this, go home. Okay. You can there's a lot of things that were going on to make it possible for people to stay home. So that wasn't the problem. The problem is people get this Gestapo thing going on. This they put on a hat where now this is their morality, this is their reality, and now they're going to push that on other people. And if it gets bad enough, and we saw in 2020 with the George Floyd stuff in Minneapolis, which is where I used to live, not in Minneapolis, but I lived close by, and I had an office in downtown Minneapolis. And this was a few years back. And in that space, I kind of got to know the streets of Minneapolis a little bit. And it's interesting, from when I was a child growing up in Minnesota till later on as an adult, how different the feeling was in these bigger cities. And I believe anyone that's in a bigger city, that you will feel the effects of actual chaos way before you or I feel them in our rural settings. So that's my biggest concern, is the HOA Gestapo effect, for people that go, my morality says this, I disagree with whatever thing it is that they disagree with. And this is really across both political spectrums. Like we were talking about before getting on, I am without question, I will never identify as a Republican or as a Democrat. The idea of party politics to me is just one more HOA effect, where you've got two groups of people that now say, well, they're terrible. Are they terrible? The other side's not terrible. You're not terrible. But when you start developing this tribal nature, then you feel as though now you have this moral authority, and that moral authority is going to turn into people hurting people. And
Yes.
that's the bigger fear, because it's not going to take much. In COVID, one of my businesses, we realized very quickly that we couldn't get specific ingredients and we couldn't get glass jars because of supply chain issues. So if those supply chain issues, for any reason, if a military of another country, if Iran or one of these other countries that really, North Korea, that don't like what we're doing, I don't think they have the power to do much, but all they have to do is weasel their way into something along the lines of breaking down the supply chain here, an EMP. And when we were talking EMPs, the idea that I have that a nuclear EMP blankets the entire nation and we lose everything, to me, is what's unlikely. But the targeted EMPs are probably a lot more
they'll
likely.
They'll shut down Los Angeles, and that'll affect the rest of the West, right? And that's,
you
that's
shut
the
down
problem.
2 ports.
Oh yeah.
One on the West Coast, one on the East Coast. And now our reliance that we have on things that are cheaper from other countries, those aren't coming over. And it just takes a little bit of a domino effect to start hitting everything else. And then all of a sudden, you get the HOA effect. And now these people with their moral superiority are like, you're not supposed to have that. You can't have that. Don't tell me what I can have. And then it's on. See,
Man,
that to me is more likely.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It's such a good point too, that I love the analogy of the HOA effect. And because I have, my wife and I took a job back down in Utah back in, gosh, what was that? 2008-ish, somewhere around there. So we moved down there for a few years. We rented this house that had a real strict HOA, and this lady would drive around on a golf cart. And she didn't like the way that I cut, when you're putting up a wood fence and you've got the corner posts, they had to be cut at a certain angle for design. Whatever. I never noticed. I'm not that detail oriented, and so I put up this fence for the dogs, and man, she hammered me on that. And I've never lived in one since. And I won't. And I recommend anybody listening to this that is in an HOA to get the hell out of there. But anyways, to your point,
I'd get out of the big cities first.
Yes. Get out of the big cities.
I just don't see the benefit of living. Man, I get it. People like
they like Uber
atmosphere.
Eats. They like Walmart. Sure. They like walking to the
And if they like it, do it. Go for it. I love that people like different things. If everybody liked the same thing, the world would be so boring.
It would be boring. But to your point that just imagine the panic that would ensue if a port on the West Coast and a port on the East Coast had that EMP effect, and it basically would shut down these ports, and that would domino effect into other supply chains, and we'd have just all sorts of chaos going on. But I love the point that you made. This going back to this HOA effect. What did you call it? HOA. I
don't really have a.
So there was a word you used. I can't remember.
It's just spitting out. We would have to go back and look. But HOA effect sounds good. I like that.
The HOA effect, where just even things like this vaccine, right? And the way people would get on this moral high ground over getting this vaccine, and I don't mind telling everybody I'm not vaccinated and I'll never get vaccinated for COVID. It wasn't our thing. We don't take a lot of medication in my family. We're leery about stuff that's brand new and being shoved down our throats by people that stand to benefit from it, honestly. And so and I don't care if they're Republican or Democrat, they were all responsible for this. And so that moral authority, that moral high ground that they would put themselves on, like, oh, you're not vaccinated, you're not wearing a mask, you're not doing this and that. Rob, I just got over COVID like last week, and it is the first time I've ever had COVID. And honestly, it was marginally worse than any flu I've ever had. And I understand that it is morphed and it is different, and there's different strains and whatnot. But I'm so tired of people who are in no position to lecture me on how to live my life and take care of my own body and protect my family are constantly doing that. And I'm over it. And I think that is part of the air that we were talking about, that heaviness that we were talking about. There's a lot of contention. There's a lot of, I noticed like social media creates a lot of that, and we don't have to go down that. We talk about that all the time, but I'm
I've got
worried,
a thought
man.
on that for you.
Yeah, go for it.
I haven't done it yet. I'm going to be doing a video. I'll probably have a video up. I don't know when this podcast is going to go out, but I've been thinking about this. Okay, I've been thinking about this quite a bit. I'm going to spitball a little bit here. You know, there's a way that we can actually determine in a smaller sense something very, very removed from reality, but yet something that we all deal with. And that is, I go to the grocery store, and when I go up to the front of the grocery store, I grab my cart, and then I go grab all the food items that I need, and I try to really accentuate kindness to the person working there, because I know that most people don't necessarily want to be there 8 hours today. They would rather be doing something else. So first, it's that kindness, but and that's not really the point. I want people to get in the mentality it's okay to not show your feelings, okay? Because everybody now wants to, oh, this is how I feel today. It's like, no one cares how you, just be nice to these people. But that's not the point. So I get my food, I pay, I go out to my car, and I put my truck, and I put the stuff in the truck. And then, you know what I do? I take that cart, and I either walk it back inside to the store, or I bring it to a cart corral. And I've been thinking about this quite a bit. There's two types of people. There's people that put their cart away, and there's people that decide not to put their cart away. And
We've talked about that exact thing.
I'm about convinced that if there was a breakdown or some societal issue, that the people that don't put their carts away will be the ones that try to stab you in the back. They're the ones that, if there's not a law that tells me specifically not to do that thing, nobody told me you have to put your cart away. If those people are going to be the ones that we need to look out for. And every time I'm in a parking lot, I'm noticing lots of carts sitting out. So immediately I'm thinking, there's a lot of people that, as long as it's not, I'm not going to get in trouble for this, am I? That they will do whatever they want to do to make their life a little easier. And like we started talking about, when everybody's trying to make their life easier, we are just setting ourselves up as a culture to just get sucker punched.
Yeah.
It's like right around the corner, this soft feeling of, and everyone deserves respect. I don't care what your sexual preferences are. I don't care about anything. Give them respect, but don't demand that I do a thing that I don't believe in, and I won't do a thing or demand a thing from you. Let's be good to each other and have some moral high ground that doesn't need to be spit at people. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And we've lost that. Where do you think, why have we lost that? Because that point you made is perfect. And it's so funny you use that grocery cart thing. I think I bored my teenagers to death about, don't ever be the kind of person that doesn't put your grocery cart away. And like, it just drives me bananas when I see, I've even rolled my window down, backing out, and told somebody, what kind of person doesn't put your grocery cart back in the return cart little thing? They have those.
I am willing,
like, man,
I am willing to bet all the money in the world that there's not a man or a woman that's been hunting for 20 years that leaves their cart out.
Right? Because I couldn't agree more.
You're tearing down camp. You're cleaning things up. You're making sure there's no embers in the fire. You're doing all these things. It's just a natural. You carry something in, you carry it out. If you kill an animal, you're carrying it out. Nobody's going to come and be like, "Hey, there's a helicopter that's going to help us bring this meat to the truck." No.
It drives me crazy. It drives me crazy. I love your point. And I've also another point to that. When I'm like hiring, so if I'm in the hiring process, I'll take somebody to lunch, a candidate for a position, and man, I am watching how they treat that waiter or waitress, because that, to me, if you don't respect the waiter or waitress, my wife and I, we started this life as kind of people in the service industry, and even if we didn't, disrespecting, because I'm sure you've been to a restaurant with somebody and they're just like rude and disrespectful, and like they have this expectation and this entitlement going on in the restaurant, and they're just rude and dismissive to the human being that is serving you. Let me get back to my question. This was a way too long of a way to ask you this, but why is it that as a society, it feels like the lack of manners is way out of control, and it is we have these folks that don't return their carts, or they mistreat the service staff at a restaurant? How did we get here?
I think we're probably more now than at any point in any of the history that I've ever studied. We're in more of an experiment than ever before. And that is, I can get on my computer. So building a social audience, you just realize real quickly that there is a lot of psychological work people are going through. Yeah. And when they can get on a keyboard and and rip somebody, like I'm in my 40s. I've been through a lot. It doesn't bother me, but these kids, like my kids or any kids that put content out there and they're putting their heart into something, oh, your face is dumb or whatever, to somebody that's just angry. You're talking to a kid. Like, what are you getting out of doing that? And I think a lot of people are these big, tough keyboard guys. And what we honestly need, and this just comes down to the reality of my response to your question, is we need the ability, and I'm sorry that this is offensive, but we need the ability when you say something dumb, that you should get punched in the face. You should feel the pain of getting punched in the face for being a jerk. Yeah. But we don't have that. So when there's no real threat, it's like all of these cities where they're having to lock up food in a grocery store, in a Walgreens, they're putting stuff behind glass because people are stealing because they're not afraid.
There's no consequences.
There's no consequence. So if there's no consequences on anything, then what are you going to expect from people in general? Yeah. Of course, they're going to have little to no respect for people around them. And it goes back to what you were kind of starting off and saying about the hunting world. And I think the hunting world has to deal with this a little bit more than most social groups. And that is, you have to feel like you have to defend something that is the most natural thing on earth. It's going out, acquiring food. And I'm sure you talk about this all the time. I feel like I have this conversation on a weekly basis, but that is and I'm not a good hunter, but when I go out and I harvest an animal and I bring it back, I gave that animal the greatest benefit of that death that they'll ever have, because there's no good death in nature. The wild. There's there's nothing. Yeah. They're going to talk about that a lot. So much. Yeah. And the idea that we're the ones as hunters, we're the ones putting all the money into the conservation. We're the ones doing all the effort. We're the ones that are looking at maps and figuring out roads and trying to figure out, well, this area, if you've got the Onyx app, you're marking things and you're putting everything in its spot. And you're like, okay, name one non-hunter that has given, willfully or not, given as much money to conservation, or that understands the natural process of life, than anyone that's not a hunter. And I guarantee you won't be able to find it. No. Unless maybe they're a conservationalist that just morally decided they don't want to hunt. And that's fine. That's their thing. That's great. Do that. Yeah. Very few people understand what that is. And the same thing applies to all the food that's manufactured to make soy. Animals are dying on the fields. Okay. The fact that you think my one cow, my steer that I processed last year, that I've been eating all year, I eat at least a pound of beef a day. It's like my multivitamin. Oh, absolutely. So every single day I'm eating beef, and it's from one of my Highlands. And it's sad. I feel sad when I had to load them up into the trailer and bring them to the slaughterhouse. It's not a good feeling. I've never enjoyed that. But guess what? That one animal instantly died and provided meat for me to eat and my family to eat for about 7 months. Yeah. How do you beat that? Yeah. I mean, give me one scenario where you can make it a better situation. I can't think of one.
You raise those Highlands, huh?
Yeah, we've got a couple of Highlands.
I might have to pick your brain after we're done recording on the Highlands. Yeah. And it's a twofold thing with the hunting community, because we've talked about that exact topic that you were just saying, that there's no better death in nature than from a hunter. I get it. There's mistakes that are made, or bad shots that are made, and suffering is created through hunting, and that's just a reality of it. It always has been and always will be. But that does not take away from the fact that for the lion's share, the majority of these animals that we kill as hunters, it's way better than starving, because we've got 4 feet of snow on the mountain, or getting ripped apart and eaten alive by a pack of wolves, which we have a major problem here where I live with wolves, and you're about to where you live. For those that don't know, he's you're in just out of Fort Collins, Colorado, right? Did I say that? Get that right?
Yep, west of
Fort Collins. So, actually, you probably already have wolves there. So the point
you go ahead.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Oh, I was just going to say, I did a video on this with my opinions on who voted for it and not. And it got a lot of traction, and the responses, and I really respect the people that feel the way that they do about this, because they just don't have the knowledge. But the idea that it's a beautiful thing to them, that's great. Are you missing the fact that they will rip apart any animal they can get to eat? And why are you okay introducing them into this environment? Let's take all the politics out of it altogether. Just the idea that we know that they're a carnivore. The only way they can survive, and they're beautiful. I think they're beautiful animals. I don't want them around, but I think they're beautiful animals. The idea that they're this majestic creature that has this fair pass to go ahead and rip apart animals senselessly and just devour them. But a hunter can't take a high-powered firearm, because now that's like, what kind of unbalance of nature is that? And you're like,
well, because
people even realize what you're arguing? I don't even understand.
Nuts, Rob. It's like we're aliens, so we're not allowed to use the resource. But wolves, they're fine. And I'm telling you, like it is the ballot box biology that happened in the state of Colorado over this wolf issue is because the problem isn't just that they voted to reintroduce wolves into the habitat. The issue that Colorado has is they are being reintroduced into the landscape without any measure of wildlife management on the wolf itself. So, like, nobody's going to be able to manage these wolves. And I'm like you. I love having wolves. I kind of like having them on the landscape. There is nothing like being out in the backcountry and hearing these wolves howling. It's the most eerie thing you'll ever hear in your life. It's crazy, and I feel bad. Yeah, you feel it. It just rocks your whole world. In a similar but eerie way, that like when an elk bugles and he's real close and he just knocks the hair back on your head. Well, if I had more hair, it'd knock back. But anyway, this whole idea that people that will have no actual interaction or any effect or any consequence to having wolves on the landscape in Colorado without management, that's going to come back and bite the entire state, because it's going to become very contentious, like it has here. And the thing is here we have groups that are trying to relist wolves onto the Endangered Species Act and try to put them back on, because they act like wolves are endangered. I'm sorry. We are upwards of around 10 times higher than the population objective commanded. And so don't tell me that these wolves are endangered. I drive up these roads. I see the ripped apart moose carcasses that were not there the day before when I was heading up to that same spot to hunt elk. That you don't live with the consequences when you live in downtown Denver. And you're sitting there, oh yeah, it'd be cute to have wolves back. Maybe I'll see them on the news. Maybe I'll see them on some documentary and see how majestic and beautiful they are, which they are. The issue is the lack of management. Colorado has the highest density population of elk in the lower 48, and that is going to be a thing of the past. And these elk are not going to know how to react to the wolf. And the first thing that's going to happen is the moose. They don't know how to react. They don't know to be defensive against a pack of wolves. They're used to coyotes where they'll just kick them into next week. And that's what happened here. It's a major problem. And if you guys are into shooting the copper bullets, man, I got a great deal for you. We have partnered with Barnes Bullets. They are world famous, known for that VOR TX rifle, the deadliest, most accurate hunting loads on the planet. I like this company, guys, because I have a personal connection to these guys. Down in central Utah, my dad's got this ranch, and on the way to the ranch, you drive past this Barnes Bullets factory, and it's a really cool building just kind of out in the middle of nowhere. So I know them well. These all-copper bullets provide destructive power, double diameter expansion, maximum weight retention, and devastating energy transfer, all with excellent accuracy. It's a great choice for Western big game hunters and shooters everywhere. So check them out at barnesbullets.com and let me know what you guys think. I appreciate it. You've heard my Silencer Central ads, I'm sure. And I don't know if you have reached out and contacted them yet. If you're interested in a silencer, though, man, this is the way to go. Silencer Central from the start to finish, because it's quite the process. If you've never gotten a suppressor for one of your rifles, you've got to go through and do the ATF paperwork and the background checks and all that kind of stuff. But the cool part is Silencer Central takes care of it all. It's a several-month process, and so what's cool about it is if you don't want to drop all that money right at the top end of this whole process, you just get a hold of them, and you can do like a payment plan while they're taking care of all the paperwork on the back end. I have the Banish 30, and this thing is awesome. I've never used one of these before, so I'm like learning as I go along. But what I was getting at is from start to finish, Silencer Central has been some of the most amazing people I've ever worked with through the process. They treated me like I was family, and I really appreciated it. You guys should check them out, and you can call them at 866-891-4494 or check it out at silencercentral.com. It will be worth your time, I promise. You know,
I got a question for you.
Yeah, go for it.
The reintroduction of wolves in its infancy really doesn't have a huge bearing per se. It has a bearing, but not a huge bearing. But as they start to have litters, and what's going to happen is what do wolves do? They're not going to go and grab a beautiful bull that's 6 years old. They're going to go for these little tiny newborns and then start decimating that population. So my question, I guess, it sounds like you've got some good insight on this. What's the spread on this? When do we start seeing the numbers actually decline to a point of, oh, I can feel it. I can sense it. It's real at this point. Like how would that, is it 10 years? Is it 4 years?
I think it's going to be super dependent on the actual habitat, because you have a much higher elk density in Colorado than we did in Idaho and Montana. So there is one zone, the Lolo zone in the state of Idaho, that by I want to say it was 2011, so less than 20 years, that elk population in that hunting zone was reduced by 90%. So that's a massive number, and you gotta remember. So wolves repopulate at a rate of 40% a year, and so without management, the wolves are they're gonna repopulate. You're gonna be within the several hundred range within a few years. Each wolf is responsible for roughly 20 dead elk per year, or large ungulate species. So if you've got a pretty healthy moose population, they're going to be the first to see the impact from it. And so it's not like this is a slow burn. This happens fast. It's going to displace the elk. The elk are going to be, instead of wintering where they've been normally wintering in the state of Colorado, they're going to end up down on ranchers' alfalfa fields and ripping up those fields. And then the Fish and Game Agency is going to have to come in and cull the elk to get them off of these farmers' fields, especially if they're these ranchers that do like these organic, what do you call that? Basically, just an organic organization where they're growing that kind of certifiable organic product. They can easily get the Fish and Game to come in and wipe these elk off the land, and then those elk have nowhere to go, right? And so it's not just the 20 elk per year that each wolf kills that is affected. It displaces them for their winter range, so fewer of them make it throughout the winter. And it then the obviously the predation from the wolves, it affects the bears. The bears get a lot more aggressive, like they are here. The bears are extremely aggressive during calving season. So these elk are dropping calves late May, early June, and the bears are on the hunt, man. They'll kill. There was one, they had a collared black bear. Gosh, it took like over 20 elk in a 2-week time period, calves. And so it just like, and it creates, I had an episode with a guy named Dr. Valerius Geist several years ago. He has since passed away. But he really explained the issue, and it's something called a predator pit, where the wolves come in and they significantly reduce the population of the ungulate species such as deer, elk, moose, and then the wolves disperse. They move on. They go to new country with where the hunting's better, and the bears come in. And what happens is the bears, because they're so effective at taking fawns and calves in the springtime, they keep that population very low to the point in which it's not growing anymore. And so when a population isn't growing, it's shrinking, and eventually even the bears suffer, and they have nothing left to eat, and there's nothing left. It's like a wasteland is what happens. And Dr. Valerius Geist proved this through a study that he did years ago, and I think it was in like Banff National Park up in Canada. But anyway, it's really destructive, and there's a lot of it again, it's not just a cause and effect. Here's wolves, now they're killing your elk. There's a lot of other things that happen because of this, such as reduced winter range and everything else, and other ways that these elk are dying because the wolves have displaced them. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. And we could do a whole podcast just on the wolf topic. But
I had to do a second follow-up video and make one more point when I was explaining my feelings about the introduction. And in it, I said, I will not be replying to a single comment, and this is my final. See you later.
Yeah,
I'm done.
It's
not my fight. It's just not
people,
my fight.
It is super contentious. Anything wolf-wise. I'm telling you, man, there's people that they just think they're a Disneyland character. And so if you say anything disparagingly about a wolf, you got to prepare to take the heat, because people just have unrealistic fantasies as to what these wolves are, what they require to live. It's crazy. So,
well, a lot of people read an article and watch a document. I guess there's a documentary that is like, oh, they put wolves in Yellowstone, and now Yellowstone's better than it's ever been. And it's
that's not true. Yeah, it's not true.
Yeah, right. I know
that whole thing's been debunked.
It's been debunked, but they saw it, and then they read an article, and it's just like, now I feel like I'm an expert on this subject, and there's only one answer, and it's my opinion.
Yeah, exactly. That's just how it rolls, man. And people will. That's our problem sometimes, especially in the hunting community. People are. You know how people are more prone to write a negative review about a restaurant than a positive review?
Sure.
Like if a restaurant makes somebody mad, man, they are getting online. I'm gonna 1-star this thing to death, and they were so mean and blah blah blah. And it's a lot harder to get people to write good reviews. It's similar from a sense that people that don't know wolves and the realities of putting wolves on this pillar, as if all other species on the landscape don't matter. That putting wolves on a pillar is like this some moral good, like the folks that were trying to pump vaccines down our throats and whatever. The problem is it's not. You're doing a disservice, but they will never go through and actually do the research outside of the propagated information they saw in some random article by a pro-wolf activist. And they'll never go beyond that. So that's their first impression of what wolves are. And they fixed Yellowstone, and now the rivers are flowing better and the elk are healthier and blah, blah, blah. All these things that weren't true. They'll never know to go back and look into that and understand that, that information was put together by these pro-wolf activists that want you to think that wolves are great for the environment and the landscape and the ecosystem. And they're just not. Without management, they're not. They're very destructive. That's what we see up here on a daily basis. It's our life. So,
right. It's the same
Yeah.
thing with every vegan documentary on Netflix.
I know. Right. There's some interesting ones on there. There's some also, but I've noticed something with this this vegan movement. There's like a change with that. Like people are starting to recognize the health risks of not eating meat and the difficulty that vegans have to just to generally be, I don't know, we don't need to get into this, but I've noticed people are starting to really push back on this vegan thing. The growth rate of veganism is shrinking, and they're having a hard time selling this cult of what is veganism. And I think it's a lot because people are kind of tired of not speaking out again. I don't know. Do you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, I've got a lot of opinions on that, but I think ultimately, if they want to eat that way, I want them to eat that. Like whatever they just
Me
the
too, man.
whole idea that we're policing, is right. But
Yeah.
don't come at me and say that animals are not, or life in general is not having to die for you to eat. It happens, and the idea that some believe that it's not happening. I've done some writing on monocrop agriculture, and there's a lot of benefits, but there's also a lot of drawbacks. And anyone that's saying that I am insert diet here and happens to be vegan, I am this, then you're going to have to take that moral code and say, I'm doing this because I don't like anything with a face to suffer. Okay, I get that.
Yeah.
I agree with that. It's not a pleasant thing. Anybody that likes it, you don't talk to me. Like, I don't want to know you if you enjoy killing, for the idea of just killing another creature. Zero interest in that. But the utility of it, that's a different story. The idea behind monocrop ag is you have all of this habitat that has to get disrupted. So then does it come down to, is a cricket's life not as important as something that's fuzzy? Or is it a certain size where you start to decide what life is good and bad? And then now, are you just as bad as those evil hunters? Like but that's never discussed that way. And to me, that's the problem I have. But if you want to be a vegetarian or be vegan, awesome. If I could script my diet, I would probably only eat beef, honey, and maybe some blueberries. But I like food, and I'm going to eat the other things too.
Yeah.
So don't come at me.
Yeah.
Don't come at me because the majority of my diet is beef. That was one animal, and yes, if they're not completely grazing on just the grass or the hay, then you have a point. I am also using monocrop ag, but it just so happens to be that the cattle that I have, those are pets, but they're also my food storage. And a lot of people can't wrap that concept. I know the cattle I have, I've got a heifer. She's not yet bred, and she's going to soon, and she's hopefully going to keep doing it for us for a while. And I've got a steer who's completely useless, but he's my buddy. And I go out there, and they're as dumb as any animal could be. They are so stupid, but I love them, and they're mine.
Yeah.
But when the day comes, it's great. When the day comes, that is a big part of my preparedness, is to have those cattle, because we do have grass. It's not great. I've got a neighbor where I'm able to purchase hay. We don't use alfalfa, just hay. So it's just straight grass, something that's close. There's nothing here that's flat. So it's very difficult. So usually I have to get something from North Park up by Walden or out east where it gets flat. But generally speaking, it's just a field where what kills me is the idea of how many people are mowing their lawns. So we could be utilizing that to make beef. You could take useless clippings, which is hay. We can't utilize, and it creates the most energy dense food on planet Earth, beef. From the L-carnitine to you just go down the list of all the B vitamin things that you can't get anywhere else. Other than the flesh of animals. The protein that is coming from that has specific nutrients that provide things that you have to synthesize in a lab to get if you're not eating beef. And to me, when you start doing that, you're going down a road of things that are not natural. So please do what you want, but don't say the way that I live is not natural, because I will go toe to toe on every subject that my focus is on what is the most natural cause and effect. And
yeah,
raising livestock and hunting seems to me, in my opinion, that's about as natural as it gets.
you don't get any healthier than beef and elk and venison. Venison is
better. Yeah.
Extremely, you know, I just feel energized when we have venison. We have a lot of venison around here, and so our, you know, it's such a. I'm like you. If somebody wants to be a vegan, I'm all for it. Live and let live. You do your thing. Don't force me to do it. And that's the problem that we run into, is they want to force us into doing it. It's the same with the wolf
why get
issue.
mad?
Why
get
you
mad at me?
Why, yeah, don't act. Understand that you are not living a cleaner life as a human, as a vegan, than I am. Like, and your life is not better for the environment than my life. Because I promise you, I have 15 acres of beautiful forested Montana land here, and I take really good care of it. And I don't care what anybody says. My effect on nature and the landscape and the environment and the habitat in the ecosystem is nothing but beneficial for future ecosystems. So this idea that you have some moral high ground over me because you're a vegan is where I draw the line. And it's the same with that wolf issue, man. I don't mind having wolves in the landscape, but we have to be able to manage them. We have to have a hunting season and trapping season. They have to have a natural built-in fear of humans. It's the same with grizzly bears. We have grizzly bear problem here in the lower 48 because we don't hunt them. They need to be taken off the endangered species list, and have a few grizzly bears taken each year through a hunting program. That's management, and it gives them a healthy fear of humans, and it keeps them away. It's just all those things. This is not like rocket science. You know what I mean? And that's what I feel like. Some of these folks, they act like their intellectual understanding on these topics over one video they watched on YouTube 10 years ago.
When you're living it.
When I live here, I live with the wolves. I see what the wolves do.
Surprise!
I hear them howl from my back deck. Don't tell me in downtown Denver that you know more about wolves than I do. I don't care if you're a wolf scientist that works at the zoo. You don't live with wolves in the wild, because they are way different than the zoo kept wolves. So,
we've got wolves. If you have a dog, I mean, it's just a little bit further.
Yeah, they're just a little. My golden retriever's not as mean as a wolf, but hey,
no,
they're the same thing. You wouldn't think that. You hear him bark, he scares. He keeps all the
question for you.
Yeah,
what is the pardon my ignorance? I didn't know that there's nowhere in the lower 48 you can hunt. And granted, we don't have grizzly. I've never had a grizzly encounter, and to me, that's the scariest creature on planet Earth.
Oh yeah,
grizzly
man.
Bear.
Yeah, grizzlies and mountain
without
lions.
Question. I would rather not have the interaction with both, but if I had to pick, I would. I don't know. I think I would not want just something about it. And it's maybe from watching The Revenant and growing up, having all these feelings about like getting ripped apart and living through it, but still it eating you. With that, there's not a single place that you can hunt a grizzly.
Not in the lower 48. So they're listed on the endangered species, and here in the northern Rocky Mountain region, Montana, Wyoming, and Idaho. They're way past what the objective was when they were initially put on the endangered species list. This was back, gosh, I can't even remember, late 70s, early 80s, maybe. So they've been on there, and they actually were removed from the endangered species list 5, 6, maybe 7 years ago. And Idaho created a hunting season where they allowed one tag to be distributed, and it was like a draw tag. Somebody drew the tag. Then a federal judge put an end to it, and they were put basically back on the endangered species list. So the thing that's mind-boggling about that, Rob, is in Alaska they have a much higher grizzly bear rate than we do here in the lower 48, right? The northern Rocky Mountain ecosystem, so to speak, or the greater Yellowstone, if you want to call it that, whatever you want to call it. I have grizzlies on my property that have come through. But what happens is the per capita human encounter with grizzly bears in Alaska is lower than it is in the lower 48, and they have a lot more bears. So it's interesting when you break that out into per capita, what that suggests, and this is what like people like Dr. Valerius Geist and other people that have actually done this for a living have taught me is these bears avoid humans because they understand that there is a danger in human bear encounters, right? And so it's the
Yeah.
exact same thing. Like New Jersey is a great example for black bears. They're always banning black bear hunting in New Jersey. And then a few years go by, and all of a sudden, there's all these black bear negative encounters with humans. They're eating their trash, they're killing their dogs, they're attacking humans. And so they bring back a bear season to try to cull them. But what that does is that also teaches these bears to have kind of a natural fear of humans and to avoid them. So the encounters go way down. Up here in Idaho, we have in North Idaho, it's a huge black bear population, but we have very few human encounters with them because we could hunt them over bait, we can chase them with hounds, we can spot and stalk for bears, and bear meat is fantastic. It's a great meat, and we still with all those
It freaks me out. It freaks me out with that. What is it called? Or what is it?
Trichinosis? Yeah.
It scares me.
It's the same thing. You gotta cook it just like you do pork. It's just it's a lot like pork. It's all it is. And so
Sure.
if you cook it right, it's actually one of my favorite meats. It's really good.
Really?
And it's so clean. And it's just like, man, you make breakfast sausage or just like a bear brat or even bear steaks into like a steak bite thing or whatever. It's great meat, man. It's really, really good. And that's kind of like my family. Our goal is between our garden and our chickens, and we're on the fence with getting cows, just because we do travel a lot. And so we've got a great setup where my wife, she gets, cow, or gosh, I'm like getting tongue tied here. She gets milk from the neighbor cow, and from that she makes all of our cheese and cottage cheese and sourdough bread and yogurts and sandwich bread and all these things, and it's so good and so good for you. And so it's a great deal. We haven't had the motivation to get our own cow because we've got such this great setup with the neighbor. And so, anyways, between that and hunting, our goal is, we want to spend as little time, effort, and money at the grocery store as we can. We want to be as self-reliant as we can. And it depends on how good of a hunter I am that particular year, that's going to really balance that out. So, what is your goal? Because you do this platform, you do, this, everything is all self-reliance and, preparing and stockpiling, and we have a huge stockpile of stuff too. So like for you guys, what's Rob's goal, to be in terms of, self-reliant? Is there, do you have like that laid out?
That's a good question about me, but I'm going to change the question just a little bit to the reason I'm sharing what I'm sharing is twofold. I am, and my apologize if anybody identifies as a crazy prepper. My whole concept behind this is those, generally speaking, those people are not people that I want to associate with. They're the guy that you're coming up his driveway on a whatever, and he pulls the shotgun out, and he's just, it's that persona of, I'm just so scared of everybody, I'm going to shoot anybody that comes on my property.
Yeah. There is that persona out there.
Boneheaded. And they're just, and I've met people over the years. They're just, there's this weird sense that they have of this skewed reality. And I what I want to do, the whole point of doing the content that I'm doing is to go, listen, this is not a crazy dude at the end of the dirt road that's going to shoot you if you're even like 3 feet from his property line. Okay. We're talking about learning the art of what was yesterday, taking those things and creating a self. And if you watch any of my videos, I usually bring this up inadvertently, but sometimes on purpose, but we're creating a self-managed insurance plan. And what that means is,
I do see that a lot on your platform, the self-managed insurance plan. I really like that.
Yeah. And so really the idea of that is to just scrape away and go, all these people that are doing it for whatever reasons they have, I don't care about that. The people that I'm reaching out to are people that went, that was weird that in 2020 and then into 2021, the government told my little business to not be open, or if somebody comes in, they have to put something on their face, or they have to inject something in my body that's been proven to neither be something that prevented the spread of COVID, which is what they guaranteed us. And I've obviously done compilations and posted those videos on previous accounts in last year. And the second thing is it also didn't diminish the death rate, which they promised that it would. And now that's a whole nother debate. And then in addition to that, which I won't go down because I just don't have the knowledge, but what if it's causing harm? And it looks like it's causing harm to many people. So you put all those things on the table. Go ahead.
That to me is the most frustrating part, because there are several instances where it's known the harm that it's causing, whether it's myocarditis or however you pronounce that. I probably said it wrong. I'm just a Montana hillbilly. Yeah. Just a Montana hillbilly, Rob. But and other things that have happened to people in these mysterious deaths and whatnot. But can you find information on it? No. You can't. Nobody's reporting on it. Nobody's talking about it. It's like this hidden hush hush thing. And that's what makes me, when you talk about like the crazy dude at the end of the driveway who's like wanting to shoot people for coming on. I have neighbors like that, by the way. And they are like that. We've all got that neighbor or that uncle or whatever. And I'm with you, man. I that is not why I do it. But if I were to be driven to that kind of mentality that guy has, a crazy guy at the end of the drive or dirt road, that's the kind of stuff that puts me there, because that's when I start thinking very distrustingly about the information I'm getting and the government that's supposedly looking out for my best interest. And I don't want to be like this real negative downer, anti-government, anti-whatever. I'm like a super friendly guy that just wants to be friends with everybody. But what in the hell are they? What are they telling me? Why am I not getting the real information? And why are they telling me the information I know to be true is misinformation? It's that kind of stuff that makes me feel like I'm going like kind of off my rocker. I won't. I'll stay on the rocker, but
the messaging is exactly for that. And that's the point. It's to go, listen, I'm sitting back here I'm saying this as a general, all of us. I'm sitting back and I'm kind of watching what's happening, and I'm seeing a system. And that system is very simple to see when you're looking at it from, this is not my business. I don't have an outcome to this, but I do know very clearly, and everybody's seeing this, the pharmaceutical industry needs to make money because they make a lot of money and they need to continue to make a lot of money. So how do you make a lot of money? It's by having sick people. And it's not like, ooh, a conspiracy. No, you make money if you own a pharmacy, if you own a company that makes pharmacological products. If you are an insurance company and you bill a certain way or only allow a certain type of drug because it's a higher commission for your company, for your insurance company, and the managers of those insurance plans, all of that, a lot of people don't have that insight of how that system works.
Hey, Rob, I don't mean to cut you off. I'm going to turn my video off for just a minute to let this internet catch up, but I'm still here. Keep going. Sorry about that.
Oh, sure.
Internet was breaking up a little bit.
It's the Starlink, as much as I want to love it. So all of these individuals, and I think there's many of us, and there's even those that I think are still unwilling to completely admit, but we look at it and go, there's a system here that's going to chug along at the expense of us. Whether we're like, hey, I had success with this pill or with this treatment. That's fine. That's good. I'm glad that you had that. But that whole industry is not set up to cure the cause of your issue. It's there to cure symptoms. Yep. And I think of it this way. Like I got bit by a brown recluse. And the only thing that you can do when you get bit by a brown recluse, and the symptoms were weird. I had so many things going on. It was,
oh yeah, they could be nasty, man.
It was just a little bit of hell. Just like every day was just kind of like something new, like just for one example, my lymph nodes, basically in my arm here was like guitar strings taut like that.
Whoa.
And I couldn't lift my arm, like weird stuff that was just, venom and that infection that it creates is just going to find the path of least resistance. So just stuff was going on with the infection and everything that kind of happened from it. But with that in mind, there's nothing that's really treatable. You just go in and treat the symptoms. And that's how the entire pharmacological industry is really set up, whether they want to admit it or not. They just go in and go, oh, you've got this symptom. Let's fix that symptom. Well, what about the root cause of what's causing that symptom? Come back tomorrow. We've got another prescription that we'll be launching. That'll help with that. So I think.
Go ahead. Oh, I was just going to say, I'd even go as far, Rob, as saying, there is a connection between the food industry and like the pharmaceutical industry and, all this processed food that gives you cancer so that they can produce cancer drugs. Yeah. I don't know how far down that rabbit hole I would ever want to go or how far I think of it, but it is awful convenient that there's like these different industries that feed the other industries. And it's like this big cycle. Like the pharmaceutical companies really benefit from these food manufacturers that make just shitty food, pardon my French, that makes people so unhealthy. They're diabetic, they're getting cancer, they're overweight, cardiac problems, and all these things that tie into huge benefits for pharmaceutical companies. If people just ate a little bit more natural, like you can identify what's on the plate, right? Oh, that's a steak and that is a vegetable. Yeah, there's nothing unidentifiable with the exception of obviously the steak doesn't look like a cow anymore, right? If people would just focus a little bit closer to the old way of eating and what I mean, a lot of what the pharmaceutical companies are selling would be out of business. And I stand by saying that, and I just don't know if there's a connection there.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a connection there, but I do know there's a connection between the FDA, the NIH, the CDC, and pharma. So it's their funding. It's not like it's a secret. But to put all this kind of to the side, the idea, and kind of going back to what we were talking about, the idea with what I want to do is so many of us that are like, wait a second, I'm realizing now that there's a very thin string holding up semblance or this reality that we have, that we get up and we go grab a cup of coffee and we do our thing. It's just life will always be this way. My message is, I hope so. But just like I don't like going to the gym or going in my garage when it's cold and lifting weights, but I know there's a benefit to that. I don't like buying car insurance for my teenagers, but I'm glad I've done that because it's come in real handy when they've had an issue. All these things I don't necessarily want to do, but I'm building up a plan because I want to be healthy in 10 years. I want to be able to hike up to, from base camp at 10,000 feet. I want to be able to get up to 11,000 feet and then go back and forth at 11,000 feet with a bow in my hand and not feel like I hate it. That's a terrible feeling. I want to have all this stuff. So it doesn't just come to me. It's like what we talked about starting off at the beginning. I've literally only taken cold showers for over 5 years. It is awful this time of year. I hate it because the pipes get really cold on the exterior of the house.
I'll bet.
So it's not like it's much worse because it's coming right out of a well anyway. So it's always kind of consistent. But some days when it's hitting 20 below, those pipes get a little bit closer to 32. Not all the way, but a little bit closer. But it's jarring. It's terrible. Some days I like it in the summer. There are times I get out of the sauna and I get in there. But I do all those things because I'd like to enjoy things in the future. But the benefit and the payoff with prepping or creating a self-managed insurance plan is you're learning. You love everyone. There's no one that learns why something works a certain way and goes, oh, I really wish I wouldn't have learned that. That's ugh. It's like, no, everybody's like, man, I love the fact that now I know how to, now I know what sodium bicarbonate is. I just did a video on this today, and I can take that, which is baking soda. I can put it with cream of tartar, and I can make something that reacts an acid and a base and will be a leavening agent in bread. Little things like that, where you just take this little bit of knowledge and knowing baking soda doesn't go bad. It loses its leavening ability over time. Cream of tartar never goes bad. Cornstarch never goes bad. Honey never goes bad. Salt never goes bad. As long as you store these things correctly, these are all things that most people go, oh my gosh, I've heard that honey's not bad, but I didn't know that about baking soda. And oh my gosh, I can take baking soda to fix indigestion, or I can brush my teeth with baking soda, or I can use it to clean my hair, or I can put it in my shoe to absorb the stink, or I can put it in a freezer so it stops the stink inside of something that spilled in the freezer. Like, you just go on the list. Baking soda is one of those things I talk about all the time because a lot of people don't realize there are multitudes of ways. So stock up on baking soda. When you run out of things, you're going to be able to use that in place of a lot of different things. But oh my gosh, I never knew that. Or do you have a recipe for that thing? So learning these things is exciting and fun, but the purpose for me, for doing what we're doing at home here and for sharing it, is to go, this is actually interesting, and it's not a bad idea for me to become a little bit more self-reliant, is it?
Yeah, no, not at all. I think if you had like a suggestion, Rob, for, a lot of people listening to this are going to be maybe folks that live in like the suburbs. They don't have the land to maybe cultivate a good sustainable annual garden. Obviously anybody could grow some tomato plants and whatnot and have somewhat of a garden, but maybe they don't live in a place where they can have chickens or raise cattle, and just, or even the space to, I've got like family members that live in these like 400 square foot apartments. Maybe they're a little bigger, I don't know, but they're like nothing. And so do you have like a very basis foundational thing that you tell people they should have on hand? Maybe it's a time period, be prepared for maybe 2 weeks without power or whatever. Is this making sense what I'm asking?
Yeah, it does. And my response is going to be disingenuous because of the fact that we purposefully, like this, the place that we live now is a lot of acreage. I've got water on the property. That flows through. I've got
me too.
My own septic tank. I've got my own well. I've got things that I purposefully have been mentally preparing for. So it's disingenuous for me to some degree to go, hey, listen, if you're in this situation, this is what I would do. Because I would get out of that situation. So that's the first thing.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I agree.
If we're thinking that way, most of the content that I've been pushing out, and we're planning on doing a little bit more things that we've done in years past, but we've just done them, but never like shared the process of those things, like you're talking about with gardening. But here's the deal: if you've ever gardened, and my dad is an absolute master gardener in Minnesota, and I grew up with big gardens. His place now that he's got in Minnesota is a monster garden that he's got fenced in.
Uh-huh.
But here's the situation with most people that don't understand that art. And that is, the yield is very small. And the yield is not only small, but the yield is at this specific time of the year. And so you better be really good at figuring out how to use a pressure cooker, how to can it. If you've got are lucky enough to have a freeze dryer, which I highly recommend, if you've got the money to get it, freeze drying is one of the best options. The dehydrator, figuring out what's the recipe to make the salsa to put in the canister, or if that meat that I just pressure canned, is that actually good to eat? So those are all questions. And then all that time that's spent, most of my getting the message across is going to be, okay, here are the things with a very long shelf life, and this is what you can expect. And as we move forward, offering more recipes using the things that you have, so it doesn't just sit in your basement or under the bed, but you can actually go, okay, so we bought this one 3 years ago. That's going to go, it's the first in, first out method. So now I'm going to put something back in and replace it. And then I'm going to get good at these recipes. I'm going to understand how to take these wheat berries and grind them down, and then utilize the baking soda and the cream of tartar that I have because they're good. And I'm going to put those together and I'm going to make some bread. And then because I've got that bread, I've also got the honey that has an indefinite shelf life. Oh, it got a little bit crystallized, warm it up in some hot water, and then you can put that on the bread. And now you've got your firearm. You've got a 3.0. One of my recommendations in the video that I did that I kind of am leading away against because I get shadow banned. And what I notice is like, I'll post one video, it'll go, and then another video where I just like the other day, I was holding up a 22 and I was explaining in my opinion.
I saw that one. Yeah.
Everybody's got a different opinion. If you don't know anything about firearms, start with this. Look how small it is. There's no recoil. You're going to be comfortable. You're going to be more confident. As you've developed that confidence, then step up to a 9mm or whatever. And I'm not a gun guy. I use them as tools. I know a lot of people that, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners know so much about it. I know enough to use most of my listeners like I use my DeWalt.
They know more about firearms than I do. They're like,
and I respect that.
I was really good when I was in the Marines with an M16E2 service rifle. Other than that,
right,
I'm mostly a bow and arrow guy, and I'm getting better with rifles though. But man, you're a wealth of information. I love the information that you put out because you put it in like these little nuggets. That it's not like, have you seen like some of these YouTube videos for things that are like similar to what you're talking about, but they're like an hour and a half of like droning on about 27 different topics. And it's like, man, I have like ADD or something. I can't watch that. I'm not learning anything. Where yours, I like how like just succinct you are with one specific topic. You post a reel and it's like, man, I actually feel like I got something out of that. And that's what is powerful with it. So I've kept you for an hour and a half, buddy. We probably better wrap this up. I
appreciate you chatting. Yeah, thank you. Loved it.
Tell everybody where they can find you in your platform, and tell us a little bit about your website too.
So buckhorncliffs.com, and the place that you can kind of start everything is, I think most people that I've known actually have an Instagram now. It seems like it's kind of a common thing. I think Facebook's kind of dying out a little bit. I think a lot of people have their reservations about a Chinese-owned TikTok and whatever. But if you just go to Robbie Benson, I wanted to switch over to the Buckhorn Cliffs because I have that's the handle on every other social platform, and they said you are unable to do that, even though I have the Buckhorn Cliffs as well. They said you can't. Even if I went and shut off the other one, they said it'll be archived. I was like, it's mine. I can't have no. So Robbie Benson at on Instagram, and love to.
Yeah, and the buckhorncliffs.com. Yeah, the guys, for everybody listening, and obviously I'll put these all in the show notes for you guys. But like even the website buckhorncliffs.com, you could jump on, and then like he's got tons of products that are super handy. Everything from like a handbook of how to do a bunch of different knots to stackable or foldable water storage products, multi-purpose storage cases. Even I love the vacuum sealer machine you've got on there. That's a really good one. There's tons of stuff. Survival medicine handbook. I love this kind of stuff. And so I this might be something I'd love to get you back on in the future to kind of get maybe dive a little bit deeper into some of those. We kind of touched on a lot of stuff from a bird's eye view, and maybe we kind of get a little bit more of a micro scale view next time and talk about some of these topics, because it's, for me, it's really interesting. And I've got a lot to learn from a guy like you.
We all do.
I just, I'd love to learn how to dehydrate, and I'd love to learn how to do some of the things like I've got it in my mind, Rob. I don't know if it's even a good idea, but I've got this area on my property picked out where I'm going to go rent a backhoe, and I'm going to dig out this giant root cellar. And I'm like, I even if it's just me geeking out of playing with the, I don't know.
You have a lot of rocks there?
No. No, not really.
Yeah, you'll be able to dig in real nice.
Yeah, I can easily go 12 feet down. I have to, because my tractor is it's a smaller one. I don't have a backhoe on it. I'm going to have to go rent one, but I don't know. Is like a guy like me wasting my time doing a root cellar?
No, I would do that in a heartbeat. The problem here, and I've got a skid steer. It's the best thing I've ever invested in it.
Yeah, that's
stupid expensive. I got an old one. I was like, you could get an older one, or you could get a brand new tractor But where we live with rocks and how everything is, a tractor would have never even remotely touched what I need to get done. So I ended up having to, expensive, but it's amazing. And I am on rock. It's just rock. So I would love to do that. So I'll probably have to do some dynamite, but I will eventually do that. I couldn't recommend that more. I mean, that is the way that our ancestors kept their food over the winter when they didn't have a refrigerator. And not even our ancestors, our grandparents.
Right,
you know,
my grandma had one. Yeah, my grandma
exactly.
And she lived in town, but she had this great big garden and all these fruit trees, and everything ended up in that root cellar. And it's just it's a great way to go. So I think so. Anyway, guys, everybody listening, check it out. Buckhorncliffs.com. Again, that'll be in the show notes. And also, seriously, it's a powerful Instagram at Robbie Benson. And that'll be in the show notes. If you guys don't know in the show notes, I had somebody ask, how do I get to the show notes? If the show notes are all that text where whatever platform you're listening on, like if you're listening to Apple podcasts or on Spotify, you're going to see a bunch of text. And I always do a little, description of the episode, and then I put the links in that are important. Then past that, you could see all the sponsor links. So that's where you can like find your Hoffman boots or Silencer Central link and all that kind of stuff. So, Robbie, this has been. Do you go by Robbie or Rob?
I haven't gone by Robbie since I was a little boy, but
I was just seeing it on
anyone that doesn't actually know me in real life, they'll say, "Hey, Robbie," and I'm like, "Oh, you know me from Instagram." Okay,
yeah,
it helps me a little.
I was literally looking at it right when I said that, and I'm like, "Oh,
no, it's fine."
So, Rob, I'm not kidding. This has been a great discussion, great podcast. I think people are they're gonna get so much value out of this, and just the information, especially if they follow you on the Insta. It's just a wealth of information. So I appreciate you joining me.
Thanks, man.
Stick on the line for just a minute. And, any closing thoughts you want anybody to know before we cut this off?
No, I appreciate the time.
All right, buddy. Thanks again. And let's do it again.
Thank you.
You made it. That's the end of the episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please make sure you're following us on Instagram at The Western Huntsman and write us a good review at Apple Podcasts. Thanks, guys. See you next time. Stay Western, and I'll see you on the mountain.